So the affirmative has still not really defined what they mean by increasing community policing strategies. They've listed examples of what community policing looks like, yet they haven't really stated what they're going to do in our own communities, specifically talking about places like LA County and the Anaheim PD, to actually solve the issues that are at hand. Something that they don't really touch on is they touch on all these examples of things that work, and the affirmative touched on a city that has one of the lowest crime rates that is the result of community policing. A lot of community policing data, though, is suspect, not just because of their sources, but because of the way this data is generally gathered. From a website called Cliff's Notes and an article called "Does Community Policing Prevent Crime?" The author states that to date, no scientific evaluations of community policing are available, and until such evaluations become available, one would be jumping to conclusions to say that community policing does or doesn't work. We haven't really observed community policing in a controlled environment yet. This means that it could either be the community policing or it could be any number of other policies that they engage that year to reduce their crime rates. Something to also note is that a community typically cannot immediately go from the worst crime rates in America to the best crime rates in America. I doubt that the affirmative, when they were talking about how their crime rate from their crime rate of one of the safest cities in America went from somebody that had horrible crime rates to a place that had amazing crime rates, just because that's something that's very hard to do and requires a lot more than just police strategies. It has a lot to do with income, average income in any given area, and other cultural differences. And they were talking about how New York easily implemented these community policing strategies to quote-unquote help solve their case. Fact of the matter is, and they were saying that they wanted to hire a lot more officers and that it was within our budget. Yet we would likely have to double the amount of hired officers that we do have. As I previously stated, from a officers per capita rate for U.S. cities statement, not only does Los Angeles have about 24.6 employees per 10,000 people, New York has double the amount at 42.3 officers per 10K, and Chicago, which has about 43.9 officers per 10K population. The affirmative stated that New York was one of the cities that had benefited from community policing strategies, yet they have double the police force we have. And they stated that it would be expensive, but we could take the hit. What they don't recognize is how much, or what they don't state is also how many police we would have to hire in order to fulfill this requirement. And doubling our police force isn't going to happen with just $1 or $2 billion. It takes about $1 million every year just to upkeep the amount that we have. Imagine the cost it would incur to actually hire double the police force we already have to mirror New York, which is apparently so successful. Something I also want to talk about is that they also claim that community policing right now doesn't work because it's in such small quantities, so they want to increase community policing. The affirmative has still not given many examples as to why community policing would work in Los Angeles County or in the Anaheim PD area, and stating that it hasn't worked, so saying we need more of it, again, is the definition of insanity that I would like to bring up again in refutation. Going back to some more cons for the implementation of more community policing is that usually evidence appealed for community policing policies are anecdotal. They're saying, well, oh, if cops are patrolling around and they're talking with the citizens, they're going to be more friendly toward each other and they're going to recognize each other as people, not just separate entities who one's trying to arrest the other and the other's trying to escape the former. This anecdotal evidence doesn't really prove anything. You can say all you want about how things sound great and then they end up not turning out in reality. This happens time and time again, and community policing is no exception to this rule. Another thing is that people say that for the evidence that does say that community policing does work, as example, in a article called "Does Community Policing Work?" by Police Magazine on the 1st of December in 2005, In New York City, people have claimed that community-style efforts are credited with contributing to the city's well-publicized plummeting homicide rate, down from 2,245 murders in 1990 to 983 in 1996. Thank you. But other factors were also at work. Later, as they talk about how the economy was improving in that amount of time, there was a declining rate of crack cocaine use among the citizens. There was added tax revenue that enabled to deploy 5,000 new officers onto streets between 1990 and 1994. So while it could have been the community policing just as anything else, again, oftentimes other factors are obvious present. Something else that I want to talk about quickly is that the correlation between the falling crime rates and the establishment of community policing may be coincidental. The fact is that over the past few years, crime has been declining and has done so in communities where no community policing is present. Again, that comes from Cliff Notes article. I'd like to state again, as I stated in my last portion of the debate, that community policing costs a lot of money. If I recall correctly, it called for $1 billion per 100,000 cops. And again, we need to double our police force, and so you can probably see what that begins to look like. We already spend so much every year on community policing just to maintain what we have. It's going to cost even more to exponentially increase our police force, and that's frankly money that we don't have, given all the other things we have to upkeep in LA County. And that is why you should vote against the policy that the affirmative is trying to push. Thank you.